Hello, friends. Tonight, we're not stepping into the spotlight of great battles or heroic deeds. No shining knights, no epic sieges. Instead, we're standing quietly in the cold, waiting, watching, guarding a door no one thinks about. Because tonight's story isn't about those who wield swords or crowns. It's about the invisible, the ones in stiff boots, the ones whose hands were too worn for glory, but too necessary to ignore. So before you settle in, maybe dim the lights, pull a blanket close, because we're stepping behind castle walls, into the world of the medieval guard, where life was long hours in biting cold, where fear hid behind stone, and where no one noticed until it was too late. Imagine yourself now, waking before dawn in a cramped, lice-ridden bunkhouse, the chill in your bones, the scratch of wool on skin, your breath cold in the air, the echo of footsteps just beyond the gate. This is what it meant to guard a castle and to be forgotten. Imagine waking before the sun rises. The air is sharp and cold, biting at your cheeks through threadbare clothes. You're in a cramped room, a bunkhouse that smells of damp straw, sweat, and something faintly sour, like old ale left to sour in a corner. The beds are wooden planks covered in rough, lice-ridden blankets. You rub your eyes, aching from the restless sleep, and the itch that never quite leaves your scalp. Outside, the sky is still dark, heavy with mist. You pull on your stiff boots, lacing them tight over cold, aching feet. There's no warmth, only the scratch of your woolen tunic against metal armor you don't yet have. Because today, like every day, you stand sentry in a thin coat. Armor is for battle, not for standing in rain or snow. You eat quickly, dried peas, hard bread, barely warm from the fire. The food tastes of dust and cold mornings. You swallow it down, knowing it's all you'll get until your shift ends. There is no rest for the sentry, no chair, no warmth, no kindness. Only the cold stone beneath your feet, and the endless watch. The morning stretches on. You're outside now. No walls to shelter you. No fire to warm your fingers, stiff and cracked from cold. Your breath clouds in the frosty air. Your cloak is soaked through with rain or snow, dripping from your hood in slow, icy beads. Your boots sink into muddy earth or crunch over frost-hardened ground. You stand motionless. No chair to rest on. No friendly voice to break the silence. The only sound is the occasional drip of water from the battlements, or the faint clang of iron from the smithy, somewhere beyond the courtyard. You watch a gate that no one uses. The path you guard is empty, and yet you cannot relax, because when the call comes, when the bell rings, when the footstep breaks the silence, you will be the first to face it. And if you fail, the castle falls. So you stand and wait. Your fingers curl around the cold iron of your spear, your eyes narrow, trying to pierce the grey mist. Your back aches, your legs numb. The hours stretch. The sun rises. You are still there. As the day drags on, the monotony grows heavier than the armor you do not wear. You patrol the battlements, walking the same stone path again and again. The chill seeps through your woolen tunic. Your feet throb in stiff boots, dampened by long hours on cold flagstones. The wind whispers through arrow slits, carrying the scent of smoke and distant fields. You pass others like yourself, fellow guards with blank faces, stoic and silent. None speak unless spoken to. The nobility above dine in warmth and laughter. Their voices carry faintly, almost unreal. Below, you move like a shadow, invisible and expendable. At times, your shift brings nothing but a glimpse of a fox darting across the courtyard, or the stray crow's harsh call. No enemy approaches, no battle erupts. You are forgotten. Yet, every moment, you prepare. Because when the unexpected comes, a messenger, a stranger, or a threat, you will be the first line. No cheers will greet you, no songs will be sung, only duty, only silence, only the cold watch. And when night falls, you trade your post with the next weary guard. Sleep is brief and light. The bell might ring at any hour, and if it does, you will rise again, to stand, to wait, to be unseen. The night was cold, deeper than most. Mist curled over the stone walls like a slow breath. Inside the guardhouse, Thomas rubbed his hands together, trying to shake off the chill. He was tired, always tired. Shifts stretched longer than they should. Pay was meager, and the cold never quite left his bones. That night, the bell didn't ring. No enemy marched. No torches blazed against the sky. But Thomas was restless. The same restlessness that gnawed at him every night he stood watch over a door that no one ever opened. Then came a soft knock. A coin slipped through his fingers. A secret opening of a side gate. And a whisper. "Let me in." Thomas's breath fogged the night air, small clouds dissolving into the mist that clung to the castle walls like a living thing. His fingers trembled, not from cold, but from the weight of the coin pressed into his palm. The gold was dull, almost unremarkable, yet it held a promise that twisted his resolve. The side gate he guarded was seldom used. Its iron bars were heavy, rusting at the edges, and its hinges creaked with disuse. It was a door forgotten by most, locked tight and left alone. Except tonight. The man outside, cloaked in shadow, did not speak his name. He did not ask politely. Instead, his voice was low and urgent, barely a whisper carried by the chill wind. "Let me in," he said. Thomas's heart hammered in his chest. His oath to guard the castle felt distant, a fading echo in the cold stone corridors. He glanced over his shoulder. Empty halls, silent barracks, the occasional flicker of torchlight from distant towers. He hesitated. The coin felt heavier, the night deeper. Outside, the man shifted, revealing a glint of steel beneath his cloak. Thomas knew what was at stake. One turn of the latch, one silent step beyond the gate, and the castle's fate would change. Slowly, trembling, he moved to the gate. The latch scraped. The gate opened. The shadow slipped inside. And the walls, once silent, waited for what would come. The night air grew heavier after the gate opened. What had been a quiet castle, cloaked in the stillness of midnight, now held its breath. Thomas stood frozen, his eyes following the shadow as it slipped into the courtyard. From the darkness, more figures emerged, silent, purposeful. They moved like ghosts, no torches, no clatter. The enemy had found their way in. Within moments, the castle's alarm shattered the silence. The great bell tolled fiercely, echoing against the stone walls. Shouts rose up from the garrison, the clatter of armor, the rush of feet. Thomas dropped his spear, hands shaking. He had betrayed more than a gate. He had betrayed trust. The siege that followed was merciless. Arrows darkened the sky. Swords rang against shields. The castle's defenders fought desperately. But the breach could not be sealed. Walls that had stood for centuries now trembled under assault. Through the chaos, Thomas's guilt grew heavier than any blade, for his failure had invited ruin, and the night that began with a whispered coin ended with blood on the stones. The siege ended with a dawn soaked in silence. The castle's stones, once proud, bore fresh scars. Thomas was no longer a guard. He was a traitor. The noblemen convened in hushed tones, faces grim behind heavy cloaks. No trial was granted, no pleas heard. They led Thomas to the outer wall, where the wind howled like a mourning wolf. His hands were bound with coarse rope. The executioner's axe gleamed faintly, catching the pale light of morning. Thomas faced the battlements he had once patrolled with pride. A crowd gathered, but no one cheered. No one wept. Only the cold stones bore witness. With a single stroke, his life was severed. His name was struck from records, whispered only in fear. Some say his ghost roams the walls, eternally bound to the watch he broke. A silent sentinel, never granted rest. Long after Thomas's body was laid to rest beneath the cold earth, his story lingered. Not in songs or chronicles, not in the halls of nobility, but in the shadows, in whispered tales among guards, in the way the wind seemed to carry footsteps when no one was there. The guards spoke quietly of a figure patrolling the ramparts in the dead of night, a shape with hollow eyes and a slow, deliberate step. Some said he was watching for betrayal. Others whispered he sought redemption. His presence was a warning, a reminder of the cost of failure, of a moment's weakness. The castle walls held more than one stone. They held memories, not all carved in stone or ink. Some were etched in silence, and in that silence, Thomas's ghost walked, forever guarding the gate he once opened. Thomas's name was wiped from records. No mention in chronicles, no stone to mark his grave. His family dared not speak of him. He became a shadow within a shadow, invisible, forgotten. Yet, paradoxically, he lingered everywhere. In the way the other guards lowered their heads when the night was coldest. In the unease that settled over the ramparts when the wind moaned just right. In the silence that followed the tolling of the great bell, as if the castle itself mourned him. His story was a caution, a whisper passed down in fragments, of a man who faltered, who sold a moment for coin, and paid in something far dearer. The castle survived, but its walls kept a secret, that sometimes the smallest failure carries the heaviest price, and that some guards don't just lose their place, they lose their very name. Long after the sun rose and set over the castle's grey stones, the story of Thomas lived on, not in grand histories or noble tales, but in the quiet corners where shadows gathered. In the cold, narrow guard towers, the younger men whispered of the guard who let a traitor in. They spoke in hushed tones, as if speaking too loudly might awaken the restless spirit that still haunted the battlements. Those who knew the story told of strange occurrences. Footsteps pacing the ramparts in the dead of night when no living man should be there. A fleeting silhouette glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, the soft rustling of a cloak that no wind could explain. The ghost was said to patrol tirelessly, his gaze fixed eternally on the gate he once unlocked. He was a sentinel condemned to wander, forever watching for the enemy he once welcomed. Some guards claimed that on bitter nights, when the moon was thin and the mist thick, a faint glow emanated from the watchtower, like the flicker of a dying candle struggling against the dark. Others said his mournful sigh carried on the wind, a reminder of betrayal and remorse. Yet, even in death, Thomas's presence was a warning to those who kept watch. Vigilance must never falter. The castle walls, cold and unyielding, seemed to absorb his remorse, as if the stones themselves mourned the failure. No torch could warm the chill that settled over the battlements when his shadow passed. His story became legend among the guards, less a tale of shame and more a solemn lesson etched in fear and respect. And so, the name Thomas was never spoken aloud by the living. Instead, it lived in silence, in the moments between patrols, in the spaces where shadows gather. A ghost not of malice, but of duty unfulfilled, of a promise broken. And in that silence, the castle held its breath, waiting for the next guard to learn what it meant to truly stand watch. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and still the story of Thomas lingered in the silent corners of the castle. The men who kept watch knew that their duty was more than routine. It was sacred, but sacred duties carry burdens heavier than any chainmail. Thomas's tale was recounted not as gossip, but as a grave warning. They told of the cold that bit sharper when vigilance waned, of the eyes that saw more than darkness. The nights grew long and unforgiving. The stone walls held memories like scars etched deep. Each guard learned to carry the weight of watchfulness with stoic pride, knowing that a single lapse could bring ruin. Some swore that on stormy nights, the wind carried the faint clinking of armor, footsteps not belonging to any living man. That a shadow patrolled the walls, unyielding and relentless. In quiet moments, when the castle seemed to breathe as one, a whisper would pass among the guards, a reminder that the watch was never truly empty, that Thomas was still there, still guarding the gate, still waiting for the day he could finally rest. And the men who stood watch after him understood this. Their eyes sharpened, their grip on spear and sword tightened. Their silence grew heavier, because they carried more than weapons. They carried a legacy, a solemn vow, to stand always, to never falter, to be the silent shield between safety and ruin. The years passed, but Thomas's story never truly faded. It became a shadow stretched across generations of guards. Yet within that shadow lay a quiet hope. Some said that on the coldest nights, when the stars were swallowed by clouds and the castle slept beneath a blanket of snow, a figure could be seen stepping from the battlements, not as a spectre of guilt, but as a watcher at peace. The restless spirit finally released, a sign that even the heaviest burdens might one day be lifted, that a man who faltered might find grace beyond stone and steel, that redemption was possible, not just for knights or lords, but for the forgotten men who bore the cold and silence. And so, the tale of Thomas ends not with a final breath in shadow, but with a gentle fading, a slow turning of the page, and a whisper carried on the wind, that every guard, no matter how invisible, holds a piece of the castle's soul, and that their watch, quiet, tireless, and unseen, keeps the heart of history beating. Beneath the cold, towering walls of medieval castles, those ancient stone fortresses that have long stood silent against the passage of time, archaeologists have uncovered traces of lives rarely celebrated or remembered. These are not the bones of kings or knights clad in gleaming armor, nor the remains of noble women draped in silks. Instead, they are the skeletal fragments of the men who held the line in shadow and silence, the castle guards. These men stood watch through countless nights, braving wind, rain, and frost without the comfort of warmth or rest. Their bodies bear the weight of this relentless duty. The bones tell their own stories. Many skeletons show pronounced curvature of the spine, likely caused by the countless hours spent standing rigid and motionless, eyes scanning the horizon for threats that might never come. The vertebrae are worn unevenly, reflecting a posture held too long, a vigilance that left no room for ease. The knees of many of these guards bear the marks of constant strain. These are not the knees of men who moved freely or at ease. They are swollen and warped, evidence of years climbing narrow spiral staircases within the towers, scaling the walls under the threat of attack, or simply to maintain the endless patrols imposed by castle life. Each step worn deep into the stones above was paid for in joint pain and wear. Even their hands and fingers betray the hardship, the tiny marks of cuts and scrapes, the tiny fractures from gripping weapons or holding spears through long, freezing nights. But more than bones, archaeologists have uncovered inscriptions scratched into the stone walls of guard towers. Tallies marking the passing days, etched by fingers numb from cold. These notches were a way to count time in an existence ruled by monotony and silence. The cold stone could not offer comfort, so these small marks became both record and companion, a quiet testament to endurance. In the dark recesses of forgotten guard rooms, graffiti offers glimpses into the minds of these centuries. Crude drawings of pigs wearing crowns, vulgar jokes meant to stave off despair, and prayers scrawled in shaky handwriting. These carvings reveal a mixture of bitterness, humor, and faith, revealing that beneath the stoic exterior, these guards wrestled with loneliness and longing. Perhaps most poignant is the discovery of a locked chest beneath the castle's foundations. Inside, archaeologists found a pair of worn shoes stuffed with straw for warmth, alongside a delicate love letter, faded with time but unmistakably human. It is a reminder that behind the armor and duty were lives lived in quiet hope, yearning for connection amidst the cold stone walls. These archaeological finds do more than tell us about warfare or strategy. They reveal the hidden culture of castle guards, their suffering, their small rebellions, their private moments. The bones and graffiti whisper of a world where honor was silent, pain was constant, and every day was a test of endurance. Within the guard towers, away from the eyes of lords and ladies, the men who stood watch sought ways to mark the passing of time. Days melded into weeks, and weeks into months. The long stretches of monotony were measured not by the ringing of bells or the passing of seasons, but by small, deliberate marks scratched into the stone. These notches, simple vertical lines, sometimes grouped in fives, were more than mere tallies. They were a lifeline, a way to hold on to sanity when the hours stretched endlessly and the cold seeped into every bone. Imagine standing on a narrow ledge high above the castle courtyard, the wind cutting through your worn cloak, your fingers numb as you press a small dagger into the stone. With each notch, you etch the memory of your survival, of one more day spent guarding a door that rarely opened. Each mark a quiet protest against the crushing weight of invisibility. Some guards carved messages alongside their tallies, short prayers for strength, scrawled pleas for mercy, vulgar jokes to amuse themselves. These small, silent acts turned cold towers into spaces of human expression. They were a secret language, a way to connect with others who would come after them, a reminder that behind the armor was a beating heart. And though their voices were lost to history, their marks remain, whispers in stone, speaking to anyone willing to look. The guard room was not a place of comfort, its walls cold and bare, echoed with the quiet footsteps of weary centuries. But over time, those cold stones became a canvas, a place where guards left traces of their hidden lives and secret thoughts. Carved deep into the stone were drawings, crude images of pigs wearing crowns, a sly mockery of the noblemen they served. Beneath them, caricatures of knights with oversized helmets and exaggerated armor, a silent rebellion in stone. There were vulgar jokes etched with chipped daggers, scribbled in haste during stolen moments of boredom. These inscriptions, raw and unrefined, offered a brief escape from endless vigilance, a way to laugh in the face of duty. But alongside humor, there was also prayer. Some guards scratched small crosses, symbols of hope, or verses from psalms they repeated under their breath to stave off fear and loneliness. These prayers, carved into stone, were whispers of faith, silent pleas for strength to endure another cold night. The graffiti was more than mere defacement. It was a testament to the human spirit, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, humor and hope survived, that the guards were more than just nameless faces in stiff boots. They were men, vulnerable, defiant, enduring. And through their marks, their voices echo still. Deep beneath the castle's ramparts, in a forgotten corner beneath the guardhouse, archaeologists uncovered a small locked chest. The wood was rotted, the iron bindings rusted, but inside lay a treasure far beyond gold or jewels. A pair of worn shoes, stuffed carefully with straw. The straw was tattered and dry, a crude attempt at insulation against the biting cold that crept through stone floors and crevices. Next to the shoes lay a delicate piece of parchment, a love letter, faded and brittle, its ink blurred by the passage of centuries. The handwriting was careful, trembling perhaps, words of longing, promises whispered in secret. It spoke of a woman waiting beyond the castle walls, of a man who dreamed not of glory or riches, but of a home and a family. The letter and shoes together told a story rarely told in the grand histories of knights and lords. They revealed the humanity of the guards, men caught between duty and desire, guarding not just walls, but hopes that stretched far beyond stone and steel. The chest was a silent testament to the hidden lives within the castle, lives shaped by sacrifice, loneliness, and love. Beyond the bones and the notches, beyond the graffiti and the locked chest, the true story of castle guards is one of quiet endurance, sacrifice, and lives lived largely unseen. Imagine a guard's day stretching endlessly from before dawn to after dusk. He rises in the cramped, lice-ridden bunkhouse with its stench of sweat and damp straw. He eats cold, hard bread and bitter ale, barely enough to sustain him. He dresses in threadbare tunics and stiff boots that pinch and blister his feet. His armor, if he has any, is heavy and uncomfortable, too precious to wear while standing for hours in the biting wind. Outside, the castle looms cold and unyielding. He is tasked with patrols, gate watches, latrine oversight, duties that are monotonous yet vital. There is no glory in these tasks, no cheers, no songs, just the endless grinding weight of responsibility. His comrades share few words. Most keep their thoughts to themselves, hardened by the same routine. Yet, beneath the stoicism, there is a deep current of humanity. The guards forge bonds born not from friendship, but from shared hardship. They exchange fleeting smiles in the rain. They share stories whispered over meager meals. They find humor in the graffiti etched into stone walls, small acts of rebellion against their grim reality. And in quiet moments, they dream of warmer beds, of families left behind, of freedom from endless watch. Their lives are marked by absence, absence of recognition, absence of comfort, absence of rest. Yet they endure, because without them, the castle would fall. And so, the invisible men in stiff boots stand sentry, guarding not just gates, but the very legacy of a world built on sacrifice. The guards who kept the castle safe were shadows, often unseen, rarely remembered. Their names were absent from the grand histories told by kings and chroniclers. Yet their presence was etched deep into the stones they walked upon. Each patrol, each watch, was a silent promise, an unspoken vow to protect not for glory, but for survival. The weight of their duty pressed heavily on shoulders already bowed by exhaustion. Many guards came from humble beginnings. Peasants and laborers pressed into service, too poor to fight as knights, but too necessary to be ignored. Their uniforms were patchwork and worn, their weapons often second-hand. And yet, they were the castle's first line of defense. Many endured injuries, twisted ankles on uneven stone, frostbite from long nights, wounds from skirmishes too small for history books. Their sacrifices were silent, their victories unrecorded. But in the quiet halls and shadowed corridors, their spirits linger, a testament to those who served without praise, who fought without recognition. Their lives remind us that history is built not only on kings and battles, but on the quiet endurance of the unseen. The castle's walls seem eternal, yet within them echo the fleeting lives of those who kept vigil. Every stone and mortar carries faint imprints of the guards' footsteps, the silent rhythms of their patrols, the whispered conversations behind closed doors. These echoes speak of duty bound by necessity rather than glory. In the long watch, guards found moments of reflection. Some carved their names or symbols into wood or stone, small claims to existence in a world that often forgot them. Others left tokens, simple keepsakes hidden beneath floorboards or in cracks between stones, reminders of loved ones left behind. Their presence, though unseen by history's grand narrative, is felt by those who walk these ruins today. They are shadows made of stone and memory, silent sentinels whose watch never truly ends. And as we trace their footsteps, we find not just walls of defense, but walls of human endurance. As twilight falls over the ancient castle ruins, the stones themselves seem to hold their breath, whispering tales of lives long forgotten. The grandeur of towering walls and imposing battlements often steals the spotlight, yet the true story lies not in the noble halls, but in the quiet, unassuming marks left behind by those who kept the watch. Archaeologists, with patient hands and keen eyes, have pieced together fragments of these lives from beneath centuries of dust and mortar. Their discoveries reveal a narrative woven not from conquest or glory, but from endurance, sacrifice, and silent rebellion. Among these fragments are worn shoes, carefully stuffed with straw to stave off the relentless cold that seeped through stone floors. An intimate glimpse into the guards' daily battle against discomfort. Nearby, the faint traces of ink on brittle parchment. A love letter hidden beneath floorboards unfold a human story amidst the stone walls of men who long not for fame, but for connection and warmth beyond the castle's chill. The stone walls themselves bear not only the scars of sieges and battles, but the subtle carvings and graffiti of guards seeking to leave a mark on a world that often ignored them. Tally marks etched painstakingly into the cold surface count days and nights spent in solitary watch, a slow, unyielding measure of time passing in silence and cold. Drawings, crude yet evocative, offer humour and humanity, mocking kings and knights with pigs wearing crowns or jesting about the absurdities of castle life. And alongside these images lie prayers, symbols of faith and hope, carved by trembling fingers in moments of despair. These markings are more than mere defacements. They are messages sent across time, reminders that behind the rigid discipline and duty were men grappling with loneliness, fear, and the need for expression. In these silent scratches, we hear echoes of their hearts. This rich tapestry of discovery paints a different picture of castle life than the one often portrayed. It was not a world solely of splendor and strategy, but also of endurance under harsh conditions, of invisible labor, and of lives shaped by quiet moments that history's grand narratives often overlook. The lessons etched in stone remind us that the cost of guarding a kingdom was paid not only in battles won, but in countless days and nights stood guard against the elements, in hope and humor scratched into walls, and in the invisible lives that held castles safe. As the sun sets and shadows lengthen across the ancient stones, we are invited to listen closely, to hear not the clang of swords or the calls of heralds, but the soft footsteps, the whispered prayers, and the unyielding watch of those who stood sentinel in silence. Within the towering stone walls of the medieval castle, life moved in two distinct rhythms, worlds apart yet inseparably intertwined. Inside the great halls, warmth and light spilled generously from massive hearths. Fires roared with steady crackles, casting flickering shadows that danced across tapestries richly woven in gold and deep reds. The air was thick with the scent of burning oak, mingled with fragrant herbs and the spice of roasting meats. Here the nobles gathered, lords draped in velvets and silks, ladies adorned in fine linens and jewel-toned gowns. They sat around tables groaning beneath silver platters heaped with roasted game, freshly baked bread, and fruits preserved in honey and wine. Furs lined the backs of chairs, soft and inviting against the chill that still haunted the stone outside. Music filled the halls, lutes, harps, and the gentle clinking of goblets, accompanied by low laughter and gentle conversation. Children of the noble house played pretend knights, their wooden swords and cloth capes sparking imaginations far from the hardships beyond. Servants moved swiftly and silently, carrying trays of food and filling cups before anyone asked. Outside, through narrow arrow slits and iron-grated windows, the guards stood motionless. Their breath formed pale clouds in the cold air. Their fingers were numb, their cloaks threadbare and stiff with damp. The world inside, so rich and full, was a realm they were forbidden to enter. They were the invisible shield, the silent watchman, the first line of defense. And yet, they were often forgotten. Their lives were spent in shadow, watching over a world that never truly saw them. Beyond the blazing hearths of the great hall lay the private chambers, sanctuaries of warmth, comfort, and quiet privilege reserved for the castle's elite. These rooms were sanctuaries far removed from the harsh realities faced by the castle guards who patrolled stone walls and gatehouses. The chambers were furnished with thick rugs woven from wool and silk, muffling footsteps and softening the chill of the stone floors beneath. Heavy drapes shielded the interiors from drafts, hanging over small leaded glass windows that caught the light of the rising sun. Beds were draped in embroidered linens and filled with feathers, warmth cradling the noble bodies after long days of council and ceremony. In these rooms, the air was scented with lavender and rosemary, oils and herbs tucked into small pouches to ease weary limbs and restless minds. Candles flickered in iron sconces, casting a warm glow that chased away shadows. Music was often heard drifting from nearby chambers, soft notes from lutes, the delicate touch of harp strings. Servants attended discreetly, anticipating needs before they were voiced, refilling goblets, adjusting the fire, drawing bars. Meanwhile, the guards endured the bitter cold. They opened the heavy oak doors with calloused hands, standing behind thrones or beside the Lord's bed as silent statues. Their lives were a study in contrast. Luxury and privation, warmth and cold, recognition and invisibility. Though they stood closest to power, the guards were denied its comforts. Their presence was necessary but never privileged. The divide between lord and sentry was marked not only by rank, but by the very spaces they inhabited. And while the nobles planned alliances and feasted, the guards kept watch in the darkness. The noble banquets were events of grandeur and ritual, staged in the castle's great hall. A vast chamber adorned with banners, tapestries, and glittering candelabras that filled the space with a warm glow. Long tables carved from heavy oak groaned under the weight of silver platters heaped with roasted meats, venison, boar, and fowl, alongside steaming bowls of stewed vegetables, fresh bread, and exotic spices brought from distant lands. Goblets of rich red wine, golden mead, and spiced ale clinked rhythmically as lords and ladies toasted to alliances, births, and victories. Minstrels and troubadours entertained, their songs weaving tales of chivalry and heroism, filling the hall with melodies that stirred the heart. Children of the noble house sometimes joined the festivities, their laughter ringing out as they played among the guests, wearing simple crowns or brandishing wooden swords, pretending to be the heroes sung about. Amidst the splendor, the guards stood apart, silent, statuesque, their duty to serve rather than partake. They bore trays laden with food and drink, opened doors, and stood watch behind thrones, their eyes alert to any sign of danger. Their armor was polished but heavy, their movements restrained, respectful. They rarely sat and never spoke unless commanded. While the nobles basked in warmth, music, and laughter, the guards endured cold floors, long hours, and the ever-present threat of conflict beyond the walls. Yet, their presence was vital. Each guard was a living barrier between celebration and chaos, their vigilance underpinning the safety that made such banquets possible. Though unseen and unthanked, their service was the castle's backbone. And in the spaces between courses and conversation, the guards remained ever watchful, a quiet, steadfast presence amid the pageantry. The noble banquets were events of grandeur and ritual, staged in the castle's great hall. A vast chamber adorned with banners, tapestries, and glittering candelabras that filled the space with a warm glow. Long tables carved from heavy oak groaned under the weight of silver platters heaped with roasted meat, venison, boar, and fowl, alongside steaming bowls of stewed vegetables, fresh bread, and exotic spices brought from distant lands. Goblets of rich red wine, golden mead, and spiced ale clinked rhythmically as lords and ladies toasted to alliances, births, and victories. Minstrels and troubadours entertained, their songs weaving tales of chivalry and heroism, filling the hall with melodies that stirred the heart. Children of the noble house sometimes joined the festivities, their laughter ringing out as they played among the guests. wearing simple crowns or brandishing wooden swords, pretending to be the heroes sung about. Amidst the splendor, the guards stood apart, silent, statuesque, their duty to serve rather than partake. They bore trays laden with food and drink, opened doors, and stood watch behind thrones, their eyes alert to any sign of danger. Their armor was polished but heavy, their movements restrained, respectful. They rarely sat and never spoke unless commanded. While the nobles basked in warmth, music, and laughter, the guards endured cold floors, long hours, and the ever-present threat of conflict beyond the walls. Yet, their presence was vital. Each guard was a living barrier between celebration and chaos, their vigilance underpinning the safety that made such banquets possible. Though unseen and unthanked, their service was the castle's backbone. And in the spaces between courses and conversation, the guards remained ever watchful. A quiet, steadfast presence amid the pageantry. Within the castle's stone walls, the noble children played games that mirrored the world they were destined to inherit. In sunlit courtyards or the warm safety of great halls, they donned miniature armor made of wood and cloth, brandished toy swords, and imagined themselves heroes of legends. Pretending to guard the gates, they laughed and chased each other beneath banners fluttering in the breeze. Their games were a light-hearted mimicry of the harsh realities their families faced daily. But for the castle guards, those children were a stark reminder of distance between privilege and service, innocence and duty. The children would soon grow into roles of power and influence, moving through richly appointed chambers and commanding armies from leather-bound maps. Meanwhile, the guards remained fixed in place, bound to stone walls and cold watchtowers. The world of play was theirs for a moment, but the real world was something else entirely. It was a world of silent sacrifice, of cold nights spent standing without armor, of orders obeyed without question, and of lives lived in the shadow of privilege. Behind every grand feast and whispered council, the castle's true engine was its servants. These men and women moved through shadowed halls and stone corridors, unseen but essential. They prepared the food, tended the fires, mended the nobles' garments, and cleaned the great halls. Their days began before dawn and stretched long into the night. They lived in cramped quarters, often cold and damp, far from the warmth of the Lord's chambers. Their work was grueling, repetitive, and seldom recognized. Yet, in these quiet tasks lay a form of power. They controlled the flow of information, overhearing secrets, observing alliances, and sometimes subtly influencing outcomes. A whispered word in the kitchen could travel faster than a messenger's horse. Servants often knew the true state of the castle better than anyone, and though they held no titles, their influence could shape the fate of noble houses. Their lives were a testament to the unseen labor that upheld the grandeur of medieval castles. Within the castle's walls, religious life played a pivotal role in both public ceremony and private devotion. The chapel was a sanctuary of calm and order, contrasting sharply with the bustling, often harsh realities of castle life. Priests and monks tended to the spiritual needs of the noble family and household. Their prayers filled the air with incense and sacred song, weaving an unseen fabric of protection and blessing over the castle. The chapel also served as a place of power, spiritual authority that could influence decisions and mediate conflicts. Chaplains advised lords on matters both divine and worldly, blending faith with politics. For the guards and servants, the chapel was a rare refuge, a place of warmth and quiet where the cold stone, felt less oppressive. Yet even here, hierarchies persisted. Noble worshippers received favored seating and special attention. Still, the spiritual life of the castle was a thread binding all inhabitants together, regardless of rank. It was a shared rhythm amid the stark divisions of medieval castle society. The lords of the castle gathered in council chambers, spaces thick with the weight of strategy and authority. Here, decisions were made that rippled far beyond stone walls. Alliances forged, wars planned, justice meted out. The council was a realm of voices raised in debate, faces lined with ambition and concern. Maps sprawled across heavy oak tables, tokens marking lands and armies, fortunes and fates. Yet, for all the talk of power, the council was also a theatre, a stage where appearances mattered as much as truth. Each lord guarded his reputation fiercely, maneuvering in a complex dance of loyalty and rivalry. While guards stood watch over gates and walls, these men wielded influence over life and death. Their whispered intrigues shaped the course of kingdoms. And yet, their decisions were made distant from the eyes of those who lived in cold towers or behind heavy doors. For the guards, the council's power was a force they could neither touch nor change. From the high ramparts, the world below unfolds in sharp contrast. The noble family's laughter drifts faintly from warm halls. The clink of goblets, the soft music, the flicker of candlelight. All signs of life lived in comfort and ease. Meanwhile, the sentries stand in cold silence, eyes scanning dark woods or quiet fields beyond the castle. Their breath is a mist in the chill air, their boots stiff with mud and frost. The division is stark. Two worlds under one roof. Inside, the fire burns bright. Outside, the wind bites sharp. The nobles' children play pretend knights. The guards patrol real danger. Privilege and duty coexist, intertwined yet separated by stone and status. And in the silent space between, history is written not in song or story, but in quiet endurance. This is the castle's true heartbeat, the invisible rhythm of those who guard, serve, and watch. So now, as the fires dim and the castle settles into silence, we remember the invisible, the guards who stood in cold rain and bitter wind, the servants who moved quietly through shadowed halls, the nobles who lived in warmth and light. Two worlds beneath one roof, one marked by privilege, the other by sacrifice, but both intertwined, because the stone walls hold more than stone. They hold stories, whispered in the scratch of a dagger on cold walls, in the tally of days etched beneath watchful eyes, in the soft prayers murmured in chapel corners. These are the stories of endurance, of quiet duty, of lives often unseen, but never truly forgotten. And as you close your eyes tonight, imagine the slow, steady rhythm of those boots on stone, the silent watch that has held history safe.